Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This will be available on our YouTube channel on Hilaal TV. Next month, from the 7th to the 10th of August, Sheikh Riad Saloojee will be conducting the Walking in Balance in Turbulent Times. This will be a weekend retreat that will be happening in Kurtuba. It will allow discussions to occur to talk about what is currently happening in the world and how we can use our beautiful religion of Islam to go ahead and overcome it. Joining me now, I'd like to welcome the man himself, Sheikh Riad Saloojee. Sheikh, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran so much for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Only a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. Sheikh Riad, how did this idea come about of wanting to have a retreat? I must confess, I haven't really heard of an actual retreat happening, especially from a spiritual perspective. So give us some insights into that, please.
Jazakumullahu khairan. I think the idea of the retreat was born from retreats that I've attended when I was a youth in the United States. And one of my teachers, Sheikh Mukhtar Maghrawi, used to have retreats every year. And the intent of the retreat was to bring together brothers and sisters and to do essentially three things and to integrate these three aspects of Islamic learning. One is to learn beneficial knowledge, knowledge that is needed as a Muslim for me to survive and thrive in a modern context. And number two is to practice on that knowledge together. Oftentimes, we simply learn for the sake of learning. And it's simply an accumulation of data and information, but no necessary translation of that knowledge into practice. And number three is to practice and learn together in what's called a sohbah, a fellowship or a companionship, where we learn from teachers, but also learn from one another. So the idea of the retreat is time spent together, where we learn, where we practice, and where we have a spiritual fellowship to magnify, augment, and assist our learning and our practice.
Sheikh Riad, and I think that's important, isn't it, given that we live in such difficult times at this very moment. This ability to have this education and the transfer of it. Discuss it with us, and the fact that this can be done in a setting where it's open to different minds alike to go ahead and allow this conversation to occur.
Yes, and I think that you described it very well. The times that we live in are very, very challenging. The theme of the retreat, as you mentioned, is walking in balance. And in part because we live in a world with so many tests and challenges and tribulations that seem to be only increasing as we get older, as modernity deepens in many of its philosophies and ideologies, that we find a lot of imbalance at the level of our emotional imbalance, psychological imbalance, certainly spiritual imbalance, intellectual imbalance. And so the idea of a retreat is for us to regain that balance by, again, trying to learn beneficial knowledge, but also beneficial knowledge, I would say, that is experiential. That is to reset, if you like, the way in which we think, to reset our intellectual frames. Islam, as you know, is a dynamic faith that has within it all that's necessary for human happiness at multiple levels, at the intellectual level, at the emotional, psychological, spiritual, of course, material level as well. So the idea of revisiting, I would say, some of our Islamic thought, Islamic practice, Islamic belief, but to do that, I think, in a way that is hands-on, experiential. We do together, we pray together, we recite Quran together, we reflect together, we learn together, and we learn from one another. And the idea, I think, in all of that is how can we find greater stability, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, in this world with incredibly changing vicissitudes, and find a way, if you like, to live and walk in balance.
You know, Sheikh Riad, you're speaking about learning together. And of course, it takes me back to the days of madrasa. Obviously, that's a very long time ago. I don't want to give my age away. But, you know, there was such unity when we used to go to madrasa. You know, we used to allow this education to be transferred from one pupil to another. In this world where we see a lot of individualism taking place, how important is this collective learning important when we speak of the year 2025, where, you know, individualism is slowly starting to take over, but there's always a chance to say, step back. We as a ummah can become this collective and really strengthen our faith in a way, like, for example, a retreat that you are set to host.
I think that's very true. I think that's one of the challenges of the age. I think broadly speaking, one of the challenges is that the way in which we learn, the way we understand education itself has been very much driven, and I would say even contaminated by foreign paradigms to Islam, secular paradigms, individualistic paradigms that see knowledge as a certain way of learning that's not holistic and not complete, but that's very segmented. So part of it is to simply gather information, to simply gather data and facts, and then that becomes knowledge. Facts and information are not knowledge. They're the starting points and maybe the springboard for knowledge, but they're not in itself knowledge. And secondly, that the venture, the project of knowledge is very much individualized. And so we've lost the idea of mentorship. You know, every single profession, I think, requires for full mastery or deepened ability the idea of mentorship. We see it in lawyers, we see it in doctors, in dentists, we see it in teaching, in many fields and in many in many fields of traditional pedagogies. There was always an idea of mentorship where you learn with someone else. You know, in our deen, in our faith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that, you know, a believer is like a mirror to his fellow believer. And this idea of being a mirror to one another is very appropriate in the context of learning. When I learn together, I not only learn, if you like, vertically from a teacher, but there's also an immense amount of horizontal learning that takes place when we have a body of students both seeking knowledge together. And then built into the learning is a sharing of knowledge. So one of the things that we have in the retreat, and by experience has been very, very successful and very fruitful and very transformative, is that we have sessions in which we ask students to reflect. You know, the material that we've learned, the material that we've shared of Islamic knowledge, now reflect on that material and project it practically into your life, contextualize it, personalize that material. And then that sharing process where students reflect about their own lives, their own challenges, their own ways in which to contextualize and personalize that information, that provides an incredible venue of learning at multiple levels. When you have people from different backgrounds, different ages, different professions, different vantage points, different backgrounds, that's, you know, levels and layers of, if you like, horizontal learning that we will not find, I think, in most secular paradigms of education, and is something that we need to revive. The idea of course, you know, the Sahaba, you know, are the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the Sahaba, the word Sahaba, the best, the brightest, the most transparent hearts, the most brilliant minds, they were called Sahaba because they had Sahba, and Sahba means fellowship. Sahba means companionship. And so even in that first generation produced by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their very nomenclature, calling them Sahaba, indicates to the way in which the prophetic paradigm of knowledge was established, which is through building fellowships, relationships, learning together experientially in real life.
Sheikh Riad, at the end of this retreat, what is it that you are hoping for from your perspective that you can transfer to the attendees that will be joining you on that weekend?
Well, I think at the end of the retreat, there are a number of goals and objectives. One is, what are the principles as Muslims if we want to live a life of greater balance, whether intellectual, emotional, spiritual, psychological, at the family level, at the individual level, collective level? What are the spiritual principles that we need to know and know very well? Those principles are like the anchors in our life. What do we need to know from our religion of anchors that allow us to be balanced, allow us to be more resilient in facing the challenges of modernity, allow us to be stronger? That's the first aspect. The second aspect would be that I would have lived them for a period of 3.5 days. I would have lived them and practiced them together, albeit in a somewhat, if you like, insulated setting, but nonetheless, hopefully to be able to have adopted some of those habits in my life by collective practice, to gain some energy, to gain some momentum, to gain some habit, and hopefully to be able to see in an experiential way the potential of these spiritual anchors in helping me live a balanced life, and that at the end of the retreat I would be, inshallah, empowered in a practical way by knowledge, by practice, and I would also have, I think, built a sort of a mini community of like-minded individuals, in this case in Johannesburg and Pretoria, by which we may be able to forge these spiritual bonds and these spiritual links, to be able to be pillars of support and solace for one another as we continue this journey of life in drawing nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Alhamdulillah. Just one final question, Sheikh Riad. We've got about 1.5 minutes left. How can the public here in Johannesburg and Pretoria get a hold of you to try and be part of this retreat?
That I have absolutely no idea about. The brother who's been a long time a student of our Suhbah seminary in Istanbul is our dear brother Zaid Tayyib, and he's been taking care of all of the logistics and all of the details. I would say, let me ask him to reach out to you and to share his information and perhaps to connect those who wish to attend or wish to experience it with him. May Allah bless you. Jazakallah khair. I'm truly sorry, but
No, it's fine. Well, I do have Brother Zaid's contact details, so if there is anyone interested, after watching this, they can obviously, I will be able to share his contacts with them. Sheikh Riad, absolute pleasure speaking to you. Hopefully we'll see you soon when you come here. All the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That's Sheikh Riad Saloojee. He'll be hosting a retreat weekend between the 7th to the 10th of August. To get more content like this, if you miss any of our programming, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You will be able to find it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.